Right, this is the moment where we try to get under the skin of the artist that we have playing for us tonight. And don't worry, Mark, it's not a sort of psychiatry thing or anything like that. There's no need to be worried. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you kind of grow up and where you're from and what was your first experience of music as it is?
I was born and grew up in Coventry, and I still have ties with Coventry, although I haven't lived there for a long time. And I got into music when I was at school there, and some of that was the original blues music.
Okay. Well, I had the benefit of a very cool older brother who was 8 years my senior, so I used to raid his record collection. What were your kind of early influences?
I don't know, I got interested in the history of it, and at one point there used to be a big event called the Lanchester Arts Festival, which was the Lanchester Polytechnic, which is now Coventry University. And they used to blow a load of money once a year on putting on 2 weeks of events. And I was at school, and at one time they had Alexis Corner come and do a lecture over 2 days on the history of the blues, and he showed up with his guitar and with some of the old Lomax field recordings from the Library of Congress, and talked about the various different original blues artists and the history of it, and I got a lot out of that.
Yeah, I mean, Alexis Corner had a seminal sort of BBC Radio 2 blues programme, and a lot of I mean, if you look at the Stones, they were always, those used to sort of rave on about Alexis Corner. I remember a great saxophone player called Art Thiemann that used to play with Alexis as well. And Lanchester, of course, is quite famous for, as the university circuit was then, touring lots of really great artists.
Yeah, we used to go there on a Friday night or Saturday night, whenever it was, see whoever was on.
Yeah.
Some pretty big names there.
Yeah. Okay, and sort of then what happened? You're in Coventry, you went to school.
I did.
Did you go on to university?
I did.
Yeah.
And when I was at school, I got a guitar, and I don't know, blues was around. You know, rock music was a pretty relatively new thing, and everybody knew. I think everybody knew where it had come from. So when you were learning guitar, I think that was a basic thing to learn. And I didn't get infected by the electric guitar bug. I probably couldn't afford one. But I was interested right from the beginning in fingerpicking, so that's what I started off doing. And then I went to university. We can fast forward quite a bit here. And then I went to London and did music for a while, but nothing really went very well. So I gave up and got on with other things. And then 10 years ago, roughly, I decided to buy another guitar, because I'd got back into music and I was assembling a collection of early blues that I couldn't have afforded when I was at school, because it was all on CD. And so I was doing that, and I got a load of books and I was reading up on the history of it, and then I got this guitar which had previously belonged to Eric Bibb, and I'd seen Eric because I saw an advert in one of the daily papers that had like a list of upcoming gigs, and it said Eric Bibb, sublime American bluesman, and I thought, I didn't know there were any of those at all living. So I went to see him actually at Warwick University, and that started off I suppose what is fashionably called a journey. And I know Eric now because he attempts to come to my house to play this guitar, but I have so far refused to give him my address.
Good man, you keep hold with the guitar. So, I mean, as I said, when I was growing up, I had this cool older brother, and I used to listen to King of the Delta Blues, Robert Johnson, and Big Bill Broonzy, and Howlin' Wolf. And I used to put that on. That was a soundtrack to my revision for my O-levels. What actually kind of got you into the blues? Was it the Alexis Corner gig, or were there other factors?
I don't know. It's a weird thing for anyone to get into, as weird for you as it is for me. Because, you know, you as a I would say middle class person, although my dad insisted that we were lower middle class, from the Midlands or indeed anywhere in England. You've got nothing in common at all with those people all their lives. So it is a bit of a conundrum why it seems to strike a chord. And my conclusion is, for what it's worth, that there's something in the attitude to life of the people that made that music that resonates with people that have a similar attitude to life. And although what you're facing in growing up in Birmingham or Coventry is, of course, nothing in comparison with their lives, I think the same kind of spirit might exist, I don't know. And I've got a feeling that the blues attitude is a Midlands one.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Going back to your guitar that you 1934 Resonator, is that right?
Yes, excuse me. It's a 1934 National Trojan, and all I know is that it belonged to Eric's dad's guitar player. And Eric's dad was a folk singer in the protest movement scene in New York in the late 50s, I think.
Okay.
With the likes of Pete Seeger.
Yeah.
And this, I think, was his guitar. But Eric is a bit of a guitar collector. And every now and again he has to sell a bunch of them. And this one was offloaded, because I don't think he ever really played it at all.
Right, okay. Going back to your life in London then, I read somewhere, I think, that you used to run an evening, a late night evening at the Islington in London. Can you tell us about that?
We did 4 years in, I guess, a pub, a music venue called Round Midnight. Oh yeah, it was okay. We did every Monday, and it was mostly a kind of rehearsal, and interesting people would come through the door there, shall we say. In fact, my drummer at one time used to, if he was outside and saw someone come in that looked a bit suspect, I'd get a text from him that read, "Nutter alert." And he was usually right. That was a good place, and it shot, things come and go, and lasted 4 years, I think we did that.
Okay, did you kind of meet, obviously the albums that you've recorded, did you actually meet any of the musicians that played on your albums at this venture that you're involved with in London?
No, a bit before that.
Okay.
When I got the guitar, I played it at home a bit, and I put it into open tunings. That's the first time I had played slide in open tunings in my previous life, but I hadn't really done the proper stuff, and I got going on that, and I found that I could play. So I kind of found my thing, and initially I wrote a bunch of tunes and did them as instrumentals, after the style of John Fahey, who I really, really like. And so for a bit I used to go out once a month and play at a place called the Green Note, which is an acoustic music venue in Camden Town. That's probably the top acoustic venue in London. I went and played there a bit, and pretty much that's where I met the people that were on the first 3 albums. I met my bass player there, who's still with me, and I did a few of the jams on the jam circuit in London.
Yeah.
And actually I met him at one of the jams. So for a little while I had up to 6-piece band. And then after the third album, the harmonica player, who was an absolute genius, went to start a new life that didn't include harmonica playing, and 2 of the others went off. And so I stuck with a trio, which is what I do today if I take the band out.
Okay. And obviously, I mean, you've mentioned a few names already. Are there any sort of absolute must-listen-to heroes that you've had over the years in the blues world?
I really liked the playing, so you would sit and marvel at the playing when I was young. I couldn't tell how you could do this kind of stuff. I loved the 12-string. I haven't brought it tonight, but I played 12-string, and Blind William McTell being probably the prime exponent of that. And I don't know, I liked all the early original stuff. Seemed to me to be original, and I don't know how much anyone benefits from other people redoing that stuff, actually.
Well, it's been said that you're a modern day storyteller, modern day parables with kind of blues and roots accompaniment. Is that fair?
Yeah. When I started to play, I had a bit of time where I tried to play what was on the original records, and I couldn't do it. And so I found that what I was actually playing was something completely different, so I thought it might as well be a different song. And then I guess the question is, what are you going to write songs about in a, I suppose that you might call it in a blues-ish idiom. And it seems to me nonsense to write words that are parodies of other people's lives years ago in places that we have nothing in common with. So it struck me straight away that it was a bit amazing that people don't write songs about all sorts of topics. You could write a song about anything in the blues idiom, why not? People do it in other idioms. And then I thought, well, I'm not interested in writing songs about myself or my own life. I haven't really thought a great deal about myself, don't find the subject interesting. And actually, doing music is, for me, getting away from my life. Not that it's bad or anything, but I don't want to cart all that stuff around with me and then go and perform it. So I started to write about topics that I thought were interesting, things I think about. So because I was doing that, and actually some of the songs also are based on what I'd read. So there's quite a few songs about blues history, about the people, their lives, things I got from the books. So there was a point early on when someone in the band said, you know, you should say what this is about. And so for a bit I was saying what they were about for their benefit. And then it just sort of grew from there, that because a lot of the songs are actually about something, therefore it's quite helpful if you say what that is.
So, I mean, your back catalogue, are we looking at, are we up to 5 CDs now, are we?
5 studio ones and a live one that's got stuff from a lot of other albums.
Okay, and that is that's the common theme throughout the whole of the catalogue, is it?
Yeah, and I don't write albums separately, so I sort of build up a library of songs, if you like, and then when it comes to making an album, we choose the ones we think make for a good mixture. So that will be some pretty new ones, and there might be some that we've been doing for years that just didn't get chosen.
Okay, who chooses? Is there a Mark Harrison committee?
My bass player, Charles Bempid, is mostly producer of the album.
And he's a good gauge.
He thinks so, yeah. Yeah, no, he is.
Okay.
It's not to do with necessarily what are your favourite songs, it's what makes for a good mixture and a good balance of topics and all that.
Agreed, yeah. And obviously there needs to be some sort of continuity, I think, for the choice of tracks on a given album or CD or whichever.
Yeah.
In some ways, that's why streaming's annoying, isn't it? Because if you look at a full body of work, then it has context, whereas if somebody just picks something out of the blue from something, maybe it doesn't have quite the same context.
It's a weird one, this. I started making albums just after people stopped buying them. I didn't know that at the time. And that has gathered quite a lot of pace, because I think initially it was just young guns that weren't buying them, but now it's everybody.
Yeah.
So it's a strange one, because if you don't make albums, you're kind of not taking part, and the whole thing about music is making albums, and this is what we grew up with, and they are collections of songs, but I'm aware of the fact that that's only something that matters if you buy the album, and if you go on Spotify and all that, then it doesn't really matter, does it?
Yeah, well, there's some optimism because record stores keep telling us that vinyl's doing well at the moment. Have you released anything on vinyl at all, or has it all been CD?
No, the cost of making vinyl is prohibitive,
Yeah.
as is the thought of dragging them around in the car. And I have a feeling that vinyl is something people say they will buy before you make it.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, but I think you could be left with large amounts of it cluttering up your home.
Well, I moved house recently and it's back breaking, so I kind of back you up with that.
Well, I don't mind having vinyl, I just don't want my own.
Okay, tell us a little bit about the most recent album, The Panoramic View, and then tell us about what's in store for 2020.
So the last album was 2018, we recorded it 2017. I tend to, the artwork and the packaging of the album has always been quite important, and right from the beginning I had these guys doing my artwork who were brilliant, and they've done all the albums, and we fell into the habit of doing a booklet with all the lyrics in, and then I started to put very, very short explanations of the songs into those booklets. And then of the last album, because I had met and become friends with the TV celebrity Gail Porter, it struck me that she could say these on the album, and that the album, therefore the physical CD, would have something on it that you can't get on Spotify. So she came in the studio and read these introductions to each of the songs, so it's a slightly different feature.
Okay, that's great. And stuff in the can for 2020?
It's all about doing gigs. Music business has changed. It had changed by the time I got back into it, I suppose. Unrecognisable. There are no such things as record companies in the old model. It's very fragmented, and if you want to get famous and make money, in my opinion, you are in for a disappointment. But if you regard it as a way of having nice experiences, going and playing at nice places, doing something that you feel is worthwhile with your life, producing something that is different and is original rather than not original, then it's all about doing the gigs. So I've done tons of really nice ones. And next year, I've got some pretty good ones next year, because we're going up in the world a bit into theatres.
Okay.
Big contracts with theatres. And I'm also doing a show, a theatre show with a man called David Freeman, who has the blues show on Jazz FM. And we're doing a show called Blues People, which is about the history of blues, which has the songs I've got woven into his talking about and showing history of blues.
Oh, that's excellent. Is it sort of Saturday, Sunday morning, his show on Jazz FM, is it?
Sunday evening, 5 to 7.
Sunday evening, okay. All right. Well, that's excellent. And talking about gigs then, tell us about some of the greatest gigs of your life. Obviously from your own band's perspective, or it could be a solo gig in the smallest room in the smallest city, or it could be playing on the same bill as one of your American blues heroes. Are there any that spring to mind there?
I haven't done any same bill as. I have left the festival shortly before the arrival of Status Quo, however.
Who played at the original Henry's Blues House, ladies and gentlemen.
Nothing wrong with the Quo. I don't know, I haven't done a lot of blues places. I don't get booked at a lot of blues festivals and blues clubs, because I'm generally considered not to be proper blues, because I don't play an electric guitar, and a lot of the blues world, it's not a criticism, but it's become like rock music, and that's the preferred kind of music. So I was very surprised by that when I started, because I thought people would come up and say, why don't you do Robert Johnson songs? But in fact, people tend to not, some people tend to think, oh, that's not blues what you do. So I don't do a lot of blues world things, and I've done all kinds of, one of the really nice things about what I do is it seems to have some appeal in all sorts of different places. So I've done lots of folk festivals and mainstream festivals and all kinds of different venues that I probably wouldn't do if I was in one specific genre. So yeah, I've done some really good ones over the years.
And is, the sort of the aggregation, as it were, with your lineup. I mean, do you have a favourite, whether it's just playing solo or with your six-piece band? I'm sure they're all sort of very different.
It's hard to say. I mean, actually, it's more relaxed for me with the band, because if I was to stop playing, there would still be a noise. I do find that fun. I do a lot of duo gigs with double bass, and that's different. He's a very percussive double bass player, and that, you know, that's a different thing altogether. And we have slightly different repertoires for the various lineups. And the solo one is, I do a lot of solo gigs, and that is completely different. It has, it's a funny one. You feel like you're on your own going around the country, and your songs are your friends or something that accompany you on the way. And generally speaking, I get to meet lots of really nice people, and I think music brings out the best in people. And so it's a completely positive side of human nature that one sees doing that.
Well, I think the thing that musicians and gigging comedians, the one thing they all have in common is probably motorway service food. Have you a particular favourite when it comes to motorway services?
I don't stop, I just keep going.
Do you?
And I might improve that next year, because some of these middle of the night drives from ridiculous distances, I might stop. No, I haven't done a lot of Watford Gap.
So you must have a good cheese selection at home then?
It's a chocolate selection. So
Chocolates.
yeah.
Okay. Now, tell us about, you haven't mentioned really in any depth about your new plans for the next album. When are you going to be recording that?
We're going to start pretty soon. I went through a time of not writing anything new for a year or two, because I had quite a lot of upheaval in the rest of life. But I have done this year, and so we've got a pool of songs to choose from. We're in the process of choosing them. And then I think the plan is afoot to do this in a slightly different way from before. And do it mostly live in the studio. So Charles is currently looking for an appropriate studio, and we'll get cracking on that pretty soon. So I've got songs for him.
Okay, and personnel, will you be with Paddy again and all the regular guys?
I don't know if I can organise it, because the last time I made an album I was still living in London, and I left last year. And Paddy lives in London, and Paddy came hot foot from the maternity unit of a hospital where his wife had just delivered, I don't know, third child maybe.
Okay.
And Paddy managed to fit in doing a recording session, and after he'd done 3 tunes, his wife called to say she was ready to come out of the hospital, and could he pick her up, and so he said, I'll have to go now because I've got to pick my wife up. And then there was a pause, and he said, shall we just do one more? So that's how he's on 4 songs. I've used this guy. I've got this genius bloke called Paul Tichenko, who's a multi-instrumentalist. And he plays mandolin, accordion, tuba, etc., etc. The only snag there is he lives in Moscow now.
It's a bus ride.
But he does come back, so if I could organise it, I would get those 2 guys back on the next one, I think.
Unless you record in Moscow, of course.
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay. Right, well, all of the albums that we've talked about, I'm sure are here.
Yep.
For anybody that's interested, I'm sure that you'd be happy to inscribe them a bit later. Okay. Well, I'd like you to give a warm hand, please, to Mark. He's going to be on stage at 8 o'clock, and we're really looking forward to it, folks. Mark Harrison.